Okay.
I think we're live. Okay, I think we're live.
We are.
Yeah, so I was saying like, let's see. I'm gonna wait till some people get in so I know exactly if we're
Okay.
live. Can you hear me still?
Say that.
You can hear me, right?
Oh, I can hear you. Yeah. I'm just a little deaf.
All right, I'm gonna wait till some people get in, and then I'll wait till like 1 minute until 3 o'clock.
That's yeah. It's only 2:59.
Yeah, and then I share this on other groups, so other recovery groups are gonna hear you speak.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. Let's do 3 o'clock. Yeah.
It's a long minute.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm looking at my clock. I'm like, this is a long minute.
Still 2:59.
I know over here. I'm like, whoa, man. Mm,
Uh,
was good. Okay, ready? All right. Welcome to Recovery Family, man. My name is Pierre, man. This channel is all about recovery, life on life terms, and family matters. So I got a special guest today. Woo! And it is a dear friend of me. I met her in a program of recovery, and I'll let her introduce herself. She's very knowledgeable of recovery. She has a lot of experience of working the program of recovery. She has a lot of experience of addiction. She's one of the women that I listen to because it feeds my spirit. You know what I'm saying? And she's if you don't know her, you should get to know her, especially as far as women, man, because there's not a lot of women that are very strong in the program of recovery. So I want to share who this lady is. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so pay attention. Hopefully yeah, I really observe her message, because she has a powerful message. Okay, I introduce her. This is Jean. Good?
I can't hear you, Pierre.
You can't hear me? You hear me? Can you hear me now? I don't know. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hold on, let me go. Can you hear me? I, I can hear you.
Ronnie Bell was trying to call me, and when I went back to this, I can't hear him.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jean.
I can't hear you.
Well,
Your
you can
volume
talk.
is
Just go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and talk.
it's up.
You
No, can
good?
you hear me? Uh-huh. Can
Les?
you hear me? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I'll just go on. I can hear you. I'm an addict. My name is Jean. First, I want to open with the prayer that I always do whenever I'm doing work or I am dealing with recovery. And that's God, grant us knowledge that we may live according to your divine purpose. Instill in us a sense of your purpose. Make us servants of your will and grant us a bond of selflessness that this may truly be your work, not ours, so that no addict anywhere need die from the horrors of addiction. Once again, I'm Jane and I'm an addict. This isn't my favorite thing to do, but I'll do anything and go to any lengths to help anybody that's in recovery. I'll tell you a little bit about my background so you can kind of understand where I came from. Um, I grew up in a very close knit home, parents, a brother, and two sisters. And we were raised in a very protective environment. I loved to cuss now, but we couldn't even say shut up in our house growing up. So that was kind of and I went to private Catholic school all my life. So that formulated a belief that I had, and I've carried it forward into my recovery. There were a lot of things that happened when I was a child that set me up for feelings of what I now know are rejection by my mom, but I didn't understand why because she never shared it with me until I was like 42 years old. Um, My sister was her pride and joy. She did everything for my sister. Everything was about my sister, the one just younger than. And I felt left out, but I never ever showed that because I hid everything. And because I hid everything, now we're going, compare this now to the disease of addiction, what happens in our lives at present. I, food became my source of love. That was my way of dealing with the pain of rejection and thinking that my mother didn't love me. Um, and I have no right, as I know now, to judge what a mother's love is because each of us are special to our parents. But at any rate, I was hurt and I lived with that. She wouldn't take me to buy clothes. This is one of the things I remember most. She wouldn't take me to buy clothes at the store or do anything because I was chubby and I wore what they then called chubby clothes. So my grandmother used to take me. And that was probably better anyway because she spent a lot of money on me. And I had the best of the best. But I still craved my mother's love. So that kind of set me up for things that I held on to when I realized what they were. When I was 43 years old, she told me that because I was still feeling that way, and by that time I was drinking excessively, I had stopped using illicit drugs because I was then married, and you didn't do illicit drugs when you were married, you just drank. And so that's what I did, ironically. And she told me that when she was pregnant with my sister, that my father or her mother didn't think she should have another child or didn't want another child. So she drank a bottle of gin and tried to abort her with a hanger. So I understood from that point on, my mother's guilt and shame drove a lot of her behaviors, not meaning to exclude me. And I couldn't accept, I expected a level of love from her that at that point she was unable to give. So, like, I'm grateful that she told me that. But by that time, um, and let me back up just a minute. I went to private school and um, we weren't allowed to do that. Like every day, my mother would say to us, "It's another day to excel." So we weren't allowed to do anything but like honor roll grades and that kind of thing. When I was a junior in high school, because I was rebellious, another sign, um, I got with then we got letter grades. I got a red F in religion because I didn't believe in some of the tenets of the faith that the Catholic Church believed in. They even brought the Monsignor from the rectory to talk to me, but that was it. So we moved to Connecticut that year in August, and I told my mother I was going to stay and live with my grandparents. I wasn't going. She said, "No, you're coming." I said, "The only way I'm coming is if I can go to public school." So I went to public school as a senior in high school, and that's when my drug use started. It started with weed, it started with alcohol, and that's pretty much all I did until I went to college. And then it progressed even further because I was doing speed and pills and snorting cocaine and all kinds of other things. And so when I got married, and the ironic thing about that, my ex-father-in-law used to tell me that he was so grateful that my then husband married me because I stopped him from using drugs. Little did they know that I really was the had the problem, not him. Um, so we got married anyway, and for the first 5 years, everything was pretty good. Um, I was like in that love phase, like he was going to school on the VA loan and got a monthly stipend, and I worked, and things were pretty good at that time until I had children. And once I had children and my attention was directed other than to him, he began putting his hands on me. To find out only too that he suffered from PTSD. He was a Marine in Vietnam and he was in reconnaissance. So he went out before the platoon to see what was there and he was messed up. But of course, needing to be loved, wanted, and accepted, anything was all right with me because I just wanted to fix him and to feel loved. I allowed myself and my children to stay in that marriage. I stayed 21 years. And now here's another character defect that's showing up because I stayed in that marriage not because of what he did to me, but because he made great money and I had control of the money and I could do what I want. And I am greedy in a lot of ways. So that was my way of getting out also of the situation mentally and emotionally because I got to spend money and drink. So after my parents died in October, both of them, and in June, he and I separated, and he had taken a job in another state, and we sold the house, and he took all the money. So the kids and I moved from the suburbs into the city of Buffalo in a house that we owned, and we were in one of the flats that were there, and we went from his income to social services, and that was dire for my children and for me. And that's when I first started smoking crack cocaine. And I know this may sound silly, but I'm grateful for crack cocaine because it brought me to my knees, and it's what made me begin recovery. So in 1993 we separated, and I got clean in 1998. During the 5 years in between, I was in rehab 7 times. My kids were taken away from me. They went to live with him. They were gone 5 years. I was a derelict. I was homeless. I did everything and anything to get the next one, no matter what it was. And finally, I made a serious attempt at recovery and relapsed at 9 months. I made another attempt at recovery and relapsed at 9 months. And when I finally came back and started recovery, I didn't even know if I really wanted to be there. I just know I wanted the pain to stop. I didn't want to have to go through the insanity. I wanted to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. And I was so used to being entitled to being taken care of that I had no clue what to do. I was like a child. I was probably like a 12-year-old because everything had always been done for me. And I never, other than to go to school, I never really had to even work a part-time job. So obviously I was caught up with crack cocaine. So going to work anywhere was not even in my thought. So when I did come in to recovery seriously, it was because my oldest daughter was pregnant with my oldest grandchild. And she said to me, Mom, if you don't get clean, I absolutely will not allow you to be around her, to see her, to whatever. So I got clean on February 5th, and she was born February 23rd, cutting it close to the core. So I stayed for a while just out of fear of that and because of fear of the unknown. And after rehab, I went to a halfway house and to supportive living. The first night I got to the head, this is why I always say, take very seriously the suggestion, don't get into a relationship. This is my own experience. The first, I got there on a Friday, and that Friday night we went to a meeting at DuPhill College. When I got to that meeting, I met this dude there who was at the Ivy House, which was a sister to the program I was in. And it was like instant. And we were together all the time. I'd come back to the house after a meeting, having seen him at the meeting, and say to my counselor, can I call him? She said, you just saw him at the meeting. What is wrong with you? So after we finished our program together, we moved in together. And that was a nightmare because he couldn't stay clean. And he didn't use the same drug of choice as I did. He shot dope. So like every 90 days or so, he would use again. And I would put up, again, I tried to fix him. I save a whole cake. I had to, took me a long time to learn how not to do that. And I still kind of fall short in that area. So we went around and around and around. And one Sunday morning, I was getting ready to go to my home group. And he was like still in bed, and we always went together. So I said to him, that probably wasn't nice. Are you coming or are you not coming? And he sat up in the bed and he punched me in the eye. I was devastated. And that was the end of it because I said, no man would ever put his hands on me again. So I called the police and he was put out. So here I am now. I have a good job. Back up again for a minute. Through what they then call VESED. It's the same program that you guys have now. It just has a different name. I went to UB and got my paralegal certificate. And at that time, I was working as a paralegal in a large law firm in Buffalo in the criminal department. So here I am with a swollen face and a big black eye, having to go to work and face all of these people. And it was, I think we were on the second floor, but there were 7 floors of attorneys. And I was embarrassed. So I told this brand new lie. I certainly wasn't going to tell anybody that someone punched me in the face. And it was the most bizarre lie. When I look back on it now, I know nobody believed me. I said that when I was going to the store um, at night about 9 o'clock, someone tried to grab my purse, and when I tried to grab it back, he punched me. So, yeah, obviously that wasn't the truth. And obviously anybody with a normal mind would see through that, but at the time it seemed okay to me. Uh, I became very involved in my job. It probably was an obsession. I absolutely loved it. I wanted to be a lawyer when I finished college. My father wouldn't pay for me to go to law school. At that time, they didn't have student loans. It was like you were responsible for your own education, because he thought that all I would do would get married and never use it. So I was in my glory being in the criminal department of a law office, being a paralegal. I absolutely loved it. And it was a great confidence builder for me, because lack of confidence was a big problem for me. And when I was living with that dude, it's normal for women to put on weight in early recovery, but I put on a lot of weight when I lived with him, because again, food, and it was a familiar source of eluding the pain. I put on a whole lot of weight, and I went up to 300 pounds. So after he left and I went out, I began to like walk a little bit on my steps, because I never really had done it. He was another thing. He was my recovery, and they say whatever you put before your recovery becomes your recovery, and that happens to me. That's my experience. So I began to work on myself in earnest with my sponsor, and I began to do step work in depth, and it made a great difference. And because of my job, and because I had family and supportive family and a lot of love, my self-esteem began to boost. And that's when I met my second husband. At that time, I think I had 6 years clean. I met him, ironically, and this goes against everything I suggest, but I'm going to tell you the honest story of what happened. I went to visit my son at the Village, and he was there as a patient, client, whatever you call it. And he sat at the table while I was visiting Neil. And he said, "I'm going to call you when I get out." I said, "You don't even know where I live." He ended up with, well, it was then Fellowship House. I think they now call it Sunday. And he came over to my house one night in the cab with a sponsee that I was about to do step work with. And he sent her home in the cab and thought he was going to stay and get something, but he didn't get anything when I sent him home. But after that, we started dating, and we started whatever. And we didn't do anything permanently for a while. And he bought me my first car in recovery. Now, mind you, I was making good money. He worked in the laundry at a hotel, but he bought me a car. And so then I was like convinced, and I was already smitten anyway. So we moved in together. And 2 years later, we got married. And marriage can be very difficult and trying thing for two recovering addicts living together. We were very good at keeping our recovery separate. We tried, and we were successful most of the time, not going to the same meetings. I never shared anything personal about our relationship or him in a meeting, nor did he me. That was sponsorship material for us, basically because we both were in the program together, and we both obviously went to the same meetings. So we got married, and the first year that we were married, he had an affair with one of my sponsees. And I was devastated, and I wanted to leave or whatever, but he promised me that would never happen again. And we worked hard on trying to put stuff back together again. And we were somewhat successful. We were very compatible. He had my back, I had his. We were like a yin and yang. What I didn't do, he did, and vice versa. He paid most of the bills, and even though I made more money, but my money was for the bigger things, or vacations, or things like that. And he was very close to my family and to my grandchildren. He was there when the two younger, now 13 and 14-year-old, were born. the older two used to come on vacation with us a lot of places. And he got um, he got the ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. In I think we identified it in like late 2013, early 2014, and that changed everything. That was a hideous disease, um, and I largely took care of him myself. We had help that came in like 3 hours a day, but I had to be there all the time. So I didn't allow myself to feel anything at the time. I kind of just went on with the flow. And I did keep a journal, and ironically, I just found the journal not too long ago when I was cleaning some things out. And I cried because when I wasn't feeling, I was writing in the journal, and it brought everything back to fruition again. And it got really bad. And, he died in March of 2016 in my living room in a hospital bed, or in our living room in a hospital bed. And that was difficult for me, but I was still not really accepting. I'm still in like a fog. And the undertaker, or whatever you call him, came to the door and knocked. And he said, "Jean?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Oh, please don't tell me that's JJ." He knew him from Buffalo. And so he came in, and we surrounded and said the Serenity Prayer, and put him in the bag and took him away. And it took me a while before I really got to feel anything about that. I kept myself really busy. I did everything for anybody else. I kept the kids all the time. Whatever I could do to not think or look at it. But grief is going to get you whether you get it in the moment or it takes a while, and it still revisits for a long time after. And then 2 summers ago, my granddaughter had a mental health episode, and after that, they all knew before that. She had told them when that occurred, but nobody told me. And this is hard for me to talk about, but I need to release it because I need to talk about it too still. My granddaughters, both of them, they're almost 2 years apart, told me that he touched their breasts when they were at our house. I said, "Where was I?" Because we used to go in the bedroom and watch TV, the kids and I, and he'd be out in the living room. To go to the kitchen to get something to eat, you went through that way. And I was crushed. I believed them instantly because I know that they were just two of them, first of all, but they wouldn't make anything about that up. And they had to go through conflicted feelings as well because they loved him. He was their papa. That's what they called him. And so then, subsequent to that, every time I go through the feelings or memories rather so much about being married to JJ, it's like slam dunk. What he did comes back, and I feel like I don't have any right to any happiness from the marriage at all based on what he did. And I can accept a lot of things in life. Touching a child is not one of them, no matter who it is. So it's kind of been a struggle for me even to still now. I still talk to my sponsor about it from time to time when I really get down about it, because it's important. I had great sponsors all along the way. The one sponsor that I had that I did the most step work first with died. She relapsed and died from the horrors of addiction. She overdosed. And so I had to find a new sponsor. So I found this gentleman who has, I remember him from when I first went to my first meeting at what was then 291 Elm. And he was there and he was collecting clean time. And he'll have 35 years in February. So he has, and I'll have 23. So he has 12 years more than me. And I was taken with him then, but I was really taken with him when I'd see him. So I asked him to sponsor me, and he really has been my sponsor except for a brief time since then. And he's all about the work. And we have, well, we don't have support group now because of COVID. He's afraid to have it. And but we have, and we do the work. We work out of all the books, and because he was in AA for so long first, before NA started in this area, he's very knowledgeable in AA. Oh, I'm sorry, in the other fellowship as well. I'm sorry, Pierre. In the other fellowship as well. So our work was very expanded on what we did and what we studied. And I've learned a lot from him. And I continue to do work. Doesn't matter how many years I've been clean. I think I've been through the steps. This is my fifth time. And that I find that to be my saving grace, because every time I go through them, I find something different out about myself. The program has really saved my life. And when I look back on where I was in the beginning to where I am now, um, I'm so grateful. Um, I, in the beginning, I didn't have any relationship with God, even though I grew up believing in God, or the God of my understanding, um, because I blamed him, ironically, for being an addict, which is really ridiculous, but it was where I was at. So it took me a minute to get into a relationship with God, and it wasn't until I went through steps that it grew and I became closer. And now I believe without the hope and faith in my higher power, I wouldn't have a chance to stay clean and to do what I do on a regular basis. It's really important to get a sponsor. It's really important to get a home group. It's really important to do service work. Service work made me not only grateful, but it made me aware and kept me identified as I got further along in my recovery of what this is all about, not only because I'm here for me, but because I have to give back so freely what was given to me, and that's really important. It's like a saving grace for me. I've done all levels of service work on every level, from region to home group to committees. And whenever I start to get dry in my recovery, I have to take a look at lack of service, because it really helps me to focus on where I'm at. Um, I retired a while ago, not too long ago, well, a while ago. And that's been a whole life changing experience for me. And if I didn't continue to do the work to go to meetings, I'm a meeting maker. I make meetings because I believe in them, because they not only do they help keep me clean so I can recover, but because they're a model or an example for other recovering addicts. And like when we come in, or when I came in, I had put people like up on a pedestal. And I thought, oh, they have all this clean time, or oh, they share wonderfully, or oh, I want to be just like them. And I found as I went along that you find your own place and your own niche and your own place you want to be and grow to. And it's not a race. There's no quick or slow, as long as you're moving in a direction towards recovery at all times, um, it works. Um, and sometimes life on life's terms are going to happen. My sister died. My husband died. I got a divorce. Um, I had birth of grandchildren. Um, so it's been good and bad and indifferent. And I had a big adjustment when I retired, because my income was so much different. And I struggle with that, because it took me back to the days when I went from an income to social services, although it's not dire like that. But it's still, and I felt like I wasn't working towards anything. I didn't have any place to get up and go in the morning. Um, I had to do what I had to do. So I became very active in the program. I did volunteer work. I took care of an elderly lady that was 103, and she was awesome. She had a keen mind for the longest time, and that kept me busy. But now with COVID, and now I have to have a hip replacement, so I'm like stuck because I can't get around. So I went through a bout of, like, I don't want to say depression, but I was being really hard on myself, and I felt sorry for myself. And I don't like self pity in anyone else. I tell my sponsor, you should have 24 hours to start getting into the solution, and I don't want to hear about the pity crap. Which I don't mean literally, but I'm trying to get them to focus on the positive and not the negative. So I've been doing a lot of different things. We have support group in my house once a week, and we work on the literature. Um, I still see my grandchildren. I have a great grandchild, and she comes and visits from time to time, and I love that. And I just work my recovery every day. No matter what goes on, I do something that I find really important to me on a regular basis, and that's I do an inventory, so I can look at what I did positively in a day and what I need to work on. And I find that really important, because then when I go through my prayer and meditation, um, through my prayer, I can like surrender what I did and ask for help. And the meditation brings me to a place of acceptance so that I can wake up in the next morning and be thankful for that I'm awake and have a positive outlook on the day. And that's not every day because we're not normal and human. And some days I get up in the morning and it's like, oh God, but I don't allow myself to sleep in that. And another thing I do when I make a decision, because I had such a difficult time learning how to make decisions, and this was a suggestion from my sponsor, and I still use it, and that's to make a pros and cons list. Write on paper, so and put it aside, and then come back and look at it, so you can have an honest look at what is the best decision for you, because we have a hard time with that. That's pretty much generally across the board. And, we get into a place, and I went through this for me too, so I'll share this also. When you're trying to make a decision, they say ask a few people that you trust. That doesn't mean five, it doesn't mean seven. This isn't a cafeteria plan. You don't go around to everybody till you get an answer that you like that might match your own. So I have a very small circle of people that I deal with, my sponsor basically. And if I can't get a hold of him, I talk to other people. Um, and it's been really helpful for me because sometimes, even now, sometimes like I still have trouble spending money. That's another thing. And so I've learned, and I learned this early in my recovery from my first sponsor, my very first sponsor, and I never practiced it until like about a year ago. Make a list on the left side of the list. Here I go with the lists again. Savings is on the top, and then after that you make a list of all the bills you have to pay. On the right side of the list you make put anything that you want, and so when you get paid you pick one of the things off the want list that fits into the budget for that particular time or month, and that really works for me. But every once in a while, like this past month, I spent way more than I needed to on clothes, which I didn't really need. I wanted. So that's like my disease acting out, or acting out on my disease even now. And it does happen because I'm not perfect. And so those are things that I have to take a look at. I don't know. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to my predecessors. And I need to say that because it was very different when we came around. And it's not like that now. First of all, it's the groups are much larger now than they were when I came around. But they didn't tolerate, there was no room for anything when I came around. And I am so grateful for that because it helped me to practice discipline and self-discipline. It helped me prioritize certain things. And I had great respect for the meetings. So I knew that when I came into a meeting, I fellowshipped before and I fellowshipped after. I didn't fellowship during the meeting. I was there to learn how to live a new way of life. And when you came into the meeting, you didn't go, if you were late, you didn't go around hugging everybody. That wasn't acceptable. You didn't share for 15 minutes. We called that self-centered unless you had a burning desire. Um, there were a lot of things that were very different then, and we needed to grow as a fellowship in order to get where we are today. I'm not saying that we should have stayed stagnant to where we were then. The program never changes, but the fellowship expands and grows and takes on a new personality based on the people that are there now. We have a lot of younger people now that we did when I first came around, and I'm grateful for that because it helps me understand better the psyche of the addict. And that might sound silly to you, but because I've been around for so long, very often I can pinpoint just looking at someone what space they're in. And when I hear them speak, I can tell whether they have, they're still in denial in certain areas or whether they have acceptance of a situation. And that comes with time. And it also comes with what I learned on my job because used to interview clients. So I did a pretty good job of practicing discernment, being able to see through the person on the other side of the table. And a lot of times they were people that I knew. And, this is earlier in my recovery, and I would see them. And so I knew who they were and what they were about. And when they lied, I used to see it like a mile away. And today, even with that, we can only get as much help as we can by being honest with ourselves and giving to our sponsor what we're really thinking. Sometimes, even today, I'll say to my sponsor, I need to talk to you. So I'll say what's on my mind or whatever, and he'll laugh and he'll say, do you feel better now? That was pretty stupid, because my thinking pattern gets clogged up sometimes. And I want what I want when I want it, the outcome to be, and we cannot plan outcomes. Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to mention today is we're a great one for expecting things from ourselves, excuse me, and from other people. And expectations lead not only to disappointment, but they can take us places we don't need to be. We can't expect for someone to respond the way we want them to. They have their own life. And that goes for sponsors, for sponsees, for friends, for family, whatever it is. And I've learned through that a lot about forgiveness. Um, Forgiveness is such an important, integral part of recovery. Forgiving ourselves for what we did and what we put family through, but also forgiving other people. That doesn't mean I have to step into the same situation because I wasn't comfortable with it. It only means that I forgive them for me. Forgiveness is for myself. And I didn't understand that concept for a very, very long time. But I've learned that when I forgive, it releases any anger, any animosity, any feeling about the situation, and I can surrender it and let it go, and I don't hold on to it, and it doesn't burden me. And that's really important. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but my head things keep popping into my head. So I think that's about all I have. I am going to go get a cup of coffee and chill. So thank you, Pierre, for letting me share
Thank you. Can you hear me?
because I can't hear him. Hold on.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
I'm going to go
Can
get
you hear
a
me?
cup of coffee and chill.
All right. Well, I love you.
Can't get it either. We can't get you. I can't hear
Well,
you.
you can't hear me? Okay, well, thank you for sharing. I love you.
Love you too.
I love you.